In the world of high society and ultra-luxury, there are certain doors that are always supposed to open for the right people. It's an unspoken contract fame grants access. But on a warm February afternoon in 2026, on the most famous luxury shopping street on Earth, that contract was publicly and violently shredded. What happened on North Rodeo Drive wasn't just a celebrity being turned away from a store. It was the visible tremor of a massive subterranean shift in power. It was the moment the most guarded fortress in fashion decided that one of the most famous women in the world simply did not exist to them anymore. And the fallout from those 12 minutes has shattered alliances, triggered panic inside Montecito, and rewritten the rules of celebrity influence. The clock struck exactly 3:41 p.m. on February 7th when the atmosphere on Beverly Hills' North Rodeo Drive shifted from its usual hushed luxury to agonizing tension. Meghan Markle arrived in a black Cadillac Escalade, flanked by her team dressed impeccably in a custom ivory cape coat and oversized sunglasses. She approached the iconic double C doors of Chanel's flagship boutique with the confident stride of someone who expects the world to part for them. She expected discretion, she expected reverence, she expected the familiar frictionless glide into a private VIP suite. Instead, she hit a wall. Two Chanel security personnel dressed in severe black suits stepped silently and firmly in her path. They didn't open the doors. They blocked them. There was no manager rushing out with apologies. There were no hushed excuses about private events. The interaction was brutal in its brevity. According to multiple witnesses and later confirmed by security logs, one of the guards delivered a line that had clearly been rehearsed for this exact scenario: "We've been instructed not to accommodate you." For a woman who had spent years cultivating an image as a global humanitarian muse, someone who once sat front row next to Anna Wintour, the moment was cataclysmic. Witnesses described a visceral reaction. Meghan froze. Her hand halfway to her phone just stopped in midair. The silence stretched for several excruciating seconds. This wasn't a mix-up. It wasn't an overzealous new guard. This was a message delivered with absolute precision. What followed in the next 12 minutes was a public unraveling that the tight-lipped world of luxury retail had never seen before. The facade of composed royalty evaporated. According to a staff member watching from the neighboring Dior boutique, Meghan began pacing like a wind-up toy just beyond the velvet ropes. The phone call she immediately placed was to Prince Harry, who was back at their Montecito residence. Witnesses reported she wasn't trying to be discreet. She was loud, frantic, and furious. "They'll be fired," she was overheard saying repeatedly. "I swear they'll be fired. No one humiliates me like this." As the minutes ticked by, the desperation mounted. She was seen pointing aggressively at the boutique entrance, and in one video clip that surfaced almost instantly online, she is clearly mouthing the words to the unmoving security team, "You don't know who I am." It was a frantic attempt to leverage a status that Chanel had just decided was worthless currency in their house. 20 minutes later, Prince Harry arrived. The description of him in that moment is telling: hooded, pale, tight-jawed. He didn't look like a prince coming to rescue his princess. Witnesses said he looked like a man walking into a storm he was already exhausted by. He spoke briefly to the head of security, who simply shook his head once. There were no exceptions. Harry didn't argue. He turned to Meghan and said quietly, "Let's go, please." They retreated to the Escalade, the Chanel doors remaining hermetically sealed behind them. But if the scene on Rodeo Drive was shocking, the reality of what was happening behind the scenes was catastrophic. The guards in Beverly Hills were merely the foot soldiers executing an order that had come directly from the nerve center of global fashion luxury Chanel's Rue Cambon headquarters in Paris. This wasn't a local management decision. This was a global directive. Insiders revealed that Chanel had deployed what is internally referred to as the nuclear option. The official term in Chanel's confidential protocols is retrait, definitive, final withdrawal. It is a policy almost never invoked, reserved only for individuals deemed to have fundamentally violated the brand's ethical trust or created unacceptable reputational risk. In Chanel's lexicon, this wasn't just exclusion, it was total erasure. The directive was absolute. Meghan Markle was blacklisted from every boutique, every showroom, and every brand event worldwide. No appointments, no product pulls for red carpets, not even press gifts. The decision had been finalized weeks earlier, signed off by the highest echelons of the company, including President of Fashion Bruno Pavlovsky and advisors to the owning Wertheimer family. A dossier had been compiled by Chanel's internal brand integrity unit, painting a damning picture. It concluded that Meghan posed a triple threat. She violated brand ethics, she created reputational risk through constant public controversy, and most damagingly, she attempted coercive influence over creative teams. Chanel had decided to cut the infection out before it could spread further. The roots of this unprecedented blacklisting run deeper than a single afternoon in Beverly Hills. The dossier that sealed her fate contained explosive testimonies regarding a secret visit Meghan made to the Chanel Atelier in Paris 14 months prior in December 2024. She had secured the invite unofficially through a stylist friend under the pretext of exploring a cultural collaboration. But upon arrival, the mask slipped. According to Atelier staff, she didn't act like a guest. She acted like a new creative director. She allegedly introduced herself as a creative partner, a title Chanel had never agreed to. The testimonies from that day are scathing. Meghan reportedly began firing off directives to the highly trained artisans. She suggested renaming a specific trim after herself. She criticized the French stiffness of the designs. But the moment the temperature in the room dropped to freezing was when she brought up the late legendary designer Karl Lagerfeld. She reportedly asked how much control Lagerfeld used to have, implying that she deserved the same level of creative autonomy. A Chanel archivist who witnessed the exchange said, "She misunderstood everything. Chanel isn't an incubator for self-promotion. It's a house of temple, and temples don't worship outsiders." The mood turned instantly cold. Following that disastrous visit, a private meeting was held between Chanel executives where Meghan was officially referred to as tactically uninsurable. But the arrogance displayed in the Paris Atelier was just the tip of the iceberg. The real fracture, the moment Chanel realized they were dealing with an existential threat to their brand identity, began during a tense standoff in the spring of 2023, known inside fashion circles as the Moodboard War. It started with a pitch from Meghan's team at Archewell for a limited edition humanitarian line collaboration. Chanel's initial response was polite, but restrained, noting in internal documents that the tone of the pitch was aggressive, presumptive, and lacking appreciation for brand structure. Despite the red flags, they agreed to a meeting in New York. That meeting became infamous within the company. Meghan arrived with a presentation titled "Reimagine Chanel from Exclusivity to Empathy." The proposal was stunning in its audacity. She wanted to replace the iconic interlocking double C logo with a discreet floral motif for her line. She wanted to replace runway models with real women, starring herself as the face and voice. But the absolute breaking point came when she proposed a line of eco-conscious handbags named after royal women, including one called the Diana. When Chanel's horrified team asked if she had received formal approval from the palace or the Spencer estate to commercialize Princess Diana's name in such a way, Meghan's reply was chilling. She reportedly told the executives, "I carry her legacy. I don't need a license to honor it." The leak of Meghan's proposed mood board a week later confirmed Chanel's worst fears. It featured archive photos of Princess Diana overlaid with photos of Meghan in similar outfits under a slide titled "From Grief to Glamour." For Chanel, this wasn't fashion. It was the appropriation of their heritage to rewrite someone else's narrative. An internal ethics alert was triggered in Paris. They realized this wasn't about brand alignment. It was about a celebrity trying to hollow out their legacy to fill it with her own. When the doors on Rodeo Drive slammed shut in 2026, it was merely the public execution of a verdict that had been reached during that secret war 3 years prior. But what many observers missed in the immediate aftermath of the Beverly Hills incident was that Chanel's move triggered an immediate coordinated distancing across the entire European luxury sector. In the ultra-high-stakes world of couture, when the king lion roars, the jungle goes silent. Our investigation uncovered that following Chanel's lead major houses like Dior and Balmain and Bottega Veneta all received informal memos from their internal communications directors, Meghan Markle was flagged with a rarely used designation, Tier 3 brand risk. This is industry code for a high-profile individual with volatile reputational behavior who offers zero upside and massive potential for litigation or embarrassment. A senior strategist at LVMH admitted under anonymity, "She's perceived as disruptive, not the kind that sparks creativity, the kind that triggers litigation." The effect was instantaneous. Paris Fashion Week's provisional invite list was released, and Meghan's name was nowhere to be seen. No front row seats, no backstage access, no media slots. For a woman whose brand relies entirely on visibility in these elite spaces, it was a breathtaking fall from grace. The fallout was practical too. Stylists who previously worked with Meghan reported that when they reached out to brands for clothing loans, they were met with a new reality silence followed by a polite redirect. The free flow of five-figure garments had dried up overnight. The message from Europe was unified. We do not want the drama you bring. Meghan, a woman famously obsessed with controlling her own narrative, did not take this institutional rejection lying down. In the 48 hours following the Beverly Hills humiliation, her team went into overdrive, deploying every tactic in their playbook tactics that had worked for them in the past against the royal family and the British press. But the world of French high fashion proved to be a very different opponent. Her first instinct was litigation. Her entertainment attorney convened a high-level call with a powerhouse litigation firm to explore suing Chanel. They looked at claims ranging from tortious interference with commercial prospects to discrimination. The legal experts, however, shut it down immediately. There is no legal precedent for forcing a private luxury house to associate with a celebrity. As one legal analyst bluntly put it, it's not discrimination, it's discretion. When the legal route hit a dead end, Meghan's team turned to their favorite weapon, the curated leak. An internal email from Archewell's communications director was blasted out to over 40 media contacts at progressive news outlets and fashion magazines. The narrative they tried to spin was one of systemic exclusion and unconscious bias against a powerful woman of color. They were trying to weaponize identity politics against a fashion house. It backfired spectacularly. Instead of sympathy, the leaks were interpreted by the industry and the public as desperate deflection. Only one minor outlet published a sympathetic piece. The major players Vogue, Elle, The Cut all declined. The industry was suffering from exhaustion fatigue. They saw right through the attempt to reframe a business decision based on her volatile behavior into a victimhood narrative. The final nail in the coffin came not from Meghan, but from Chanel itself, in a move that demonstrated the icy resolve of the luxury world. A private email written by Bruno Pavlovsky, the president of Chanel's fashion division, was leaked onto a restricted industry server. Dated before the Beverly Hills incident, it read, "There are moments when silence protects the house more than response. This is one. We cannot be expected to absorb chaos for the sake of celebrity." The decision regarding Markle was strategic, not emotional. That email crystallized the situation for everyone. Meghan hadn't just lost favor, she had been strategically assessed by the smartest minds in luxury branding and deemed a liability. A week after the standoff on Rodeo Drive, the reality has set in. Meghan Markle is no longer fighting for access. She is fighting against total irrelevance in the spaces she values most. The global blacklist stands firm. The legal threats have evaporated. The PR spin has failed. The impact is already rippling far beyond fashion. Insiders at Netflix and Spotify report that deals are dying on the vine because no major corporate brand wants to be associated with someone whose influence is perceived as chaotic and manufactured. The Sussex household in Montecito is described by neighbors as claustrophobic, with the social orbit shrinking rapidly as calls go unanswered and invitations dry up. And perhaps most telling is the quiet maneuvering happening on the other side of the equation. Sources within the extended Windsor circle confirm that Prince Harry has begun discreet inquiries into a possible soft reintegration into non-public charity roles within the UK, a tentative step back toward the institutions he left behind. But these discussions reportedly hinge on one non-negotiable condition relayed by the palace: Meghan must not be involved. On Rodeo Drive, the doors of Chanel remain closed, standing as a silent, glamorous monument to the day the fashion world decided that some prices were simply too high to pay even for a Duchess. While Prince Harry looks toward London for a solitary escape route, Meghan has been frantically trying to rebuild the bridges she burned in Hollywood and Europe, only to find that the damage is total and irreparable. The silence from the fashion houses quickly spread to the media outlets that once fought for her exclusives, creating a vacuum of influence that her team desperately tried to fill. In the immediate aftermath of the Beverly Hills humiliation, Meghan's crisis PR firm Atelier Strategies went into overdrive. They didn't just try to stop the bleeding, they attempted a full-scale narrative pivot. According to leaked internal communications, her team pitched at least 5 distinct image restoration features to major lifestyle platforms in the span of 48 hours. The desperation was palpable in the variety of the angles. They proposed a reconciliation feature with Harper's Bazaar banking on a redemption arc. It was declined. They pitched a digital cover to InStyle focused on eco-conscious fashion, trying to pivot back to safe humanitarian ground. They were ghosted. Even a proposed guest spot on a podcast hosted by Stella McCartney, a friend and fellow outsider to the traditional royal establishment, was turned down. The feedback from editors was uniform, and damning Meghan Markle had become radioactive. As one editor at a major French publication privately admitted, "We're not judging her politics. We're judging her volatility. She enters the room and it becomes about liability, not luxury." While American media outlets simply went quiet, treading carefully around the usual narratives, the European press, particularly in France, went on the offensive. Having seen Chanel take the first step, the French media felt emboldened to dismantle the carefully curated image of the Duchess. They didn't hold back. Le Figaro ran a blistering fashion column headlined, "Chanel's Silence More Powerful Than Words." Gala magazine published a feature titled "From Grace to Grading the Fall of a Duchess." But perhaps the most cutting critique came from Vanity Fair France, which wrote, "Madame Markle confuses disruption with dominance, but couture does not bend to ego." The verdict from Paris was clear: you cannot force your way into an ecosystem built on centuries of nuance and expect to be welcomed. Inside the Sussex's Montecito base of operations, this external collapse triggered internal chaos. A staffer who resigned days after the incident described a sense of sheer panic within Archewell. Meghan, accustomed to being able to twist any narrative in her favor, was losing control of the headlines, and her reaction was to double down on the very tactics that had caused the crisis. Leaked WhatsApp messages revealed Meghan demanding her team get ahead of the story, ordering them to pitch the humanitarian angle harder. Most shockingly, in a move that demonstrated a total lack of self-awareness regarding the Chanel Moodboard War, she instructed aides to use the Diana reference if needed. One message read, "Remind them who I am. Remind them what I've survived." She was attempting to use past trauma as currency to buy back present-day glamour, but the market had crashed. Now faced with an American luxury market that has walled her off and a European elite that openly mocks her, the discussion in the Sussex household has turned to retreat. Sources confirm that Meghan is quietly exploring relocation options outside the United States, with Switzerland and Canada being touted as potential new bases. While these potential moves are being publicly framed by her remaining team as a search for wellness and nature, insiders know the reality is far grimmer. It's not a fresh start. It's a strategic withdrawal from a battlefield where she has been decisively defeated.